McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here today with me is Ed Steer of Gold and Silver Digest and GATA. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Yes, no problem. Always great to hear from you. So we're here at VRIC. Yesterday you gave a presentation titled JP Morgan and Scotiabank, Still Rigging the Silver Price. You did make an adjustment to the title during the talk. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Certainly. Scotiabank has been trying to flog their precious metals division, Scotia Macata. They've been doing it on the sly for about 18 months now. And they finally went public with it, I think it was in November or December, it was 3 or 4 months ago. And they're trying to, Scotiabank said basically they're either going to try and sell the company, and I wish them luck, and obviously they haven't had much success in the last year, or they're going to try to wind down the operations. And what I noticed in my presentation, I didn't discover it until like 6 hours before I got up there to give the speech, because I had to give the title out 2 or 3 weeks ago. What I discovered was that Scotiabank's short position in the silver market has gone from a really huge number down to a number that's, well, it's not inconsequential, but it certainly isn't what it was before. So Scotiabank is making good on their promise that obviously they can't sell the company, so they're just getting out of Dodge as far as silver and gold price manipulation is concerned. The problem, of course, is that they've shifted that short position onto the other large 8 traders that are short in the COMEX silver market. And of course, the biggest one of all is JP Morgan, and they've assumed the lion's share of that. But the other traders in the big 8 category have picked up their little bits as well. So now we have Scotiabank almost inconsequential. And I don't think they're active in the market at all anymore, but JP Morgan has always been the tallest hog at the trough, controlling the whole thing, and now they're obviously the tallest hog at the trough. So until that changes, like I said in this place this time last year when I was standing here, until that changes, nothing changes.
Okay, for those who may not be familiar, how did we get into this position with these 8 traders? How did that all start? Well,
it started probably 25 or 30 years ago. It's been going on for generations, actually, since the COMEX futures market was first brought into existence in 1974. That was a way for banks and governments to control commodity prices by having a futures exchange where they could trade futures contracts and suppress the price. So this is not something that's been going on for a year or 2 years, 5 years or 10 years. It's been going on for a couple of generations. And in order to suppress commodity prices so that they can print all the money in the world they want, and of course you take a look at the stock market prices we have today, the bond market, the whole 9 yards, they've been able to build up this fiat currency system to this pinnacle that they're at now, but they really are running out of options. But that's basically, they've been basically suppressing the producers class at the expense, or for their own benefit, for the paper hangers on Wall Street and the central banks of the world.
Okay. So there are still skeptics, there are people who don't think this is happening. Do you have a go-to example that you use to show those people and say, okay, this really proves it, this is an easy way to look at it?
Well, a silver analyst, Ted Butler, says, give me one legitimate reason why 8 traders will be short more than 60% of world silver production and more than 50% of all the silver bullion that exists in the world at a price that's 70% below its price of 2011, and at its barely at its cost of production. Where's the legitimate reason for that to be in place? And what would happen to the price of precious metals if that short position, which is grotesque and obscene, was suddenly removed? What would the price of silver be or gold or platinum or palladium, if this short position was removed? And the other example he gave, what would be the price of any commodity, whether it be copper or crude oil or wheat, if you took the short position in silver and stuck it on the short position of crude oil? You'd see crude oil at $3 a barrel, or copper at 10 cents a pound. That's what's happening in the precious metals. But as long as they control the prices of precious metals, they can control the entire commodity complex, which is what I explained to you last year. Okay, so it's obvious, like I said, if you take the short position in silver from my charts yesterday, I saw you at my presentation, and thank you for coming. If you take the short position in the 4 precious metals and transfer them to any other commodity, that price of that commodity would be in the dirt.
Okay, that's what I was hoping you'd say. I hoped you'd use those examples. Okay, so you come to these shows, you do a lot of educating, I think, for investors and people in the market.
I try.
You try. So what should your everyday investor be doing can they do anything?
Well, they should be know the fact that when they are investing in the precious metals, that the markets are managed, okay, by the central banks of the world. JP Morgan being the main culprit here. It's basically a U.S. market rigging operation. But like all market rigging operations, it will end. Of course, we've been saying that now with GATA and myself for the last 18 years. And one of these days it will end. I know that JP Morgan has accumulated a massive amount of silver, physical silver, both on the COMEX and off the COMEX. And they're now accumulating gold massively too. So I think this price management scheme days are numbered. It's just a matter of fact, I don't know what that day is going to be. But I can tell you right now, if you're not positioned the day before, the day afterwards, you're going to be out of luck.
Yeah, and there have been in the news, some of these banks have faced lawsuits and things like that. What has happened with those? Are there any ongoing right now, or?
Well, there's been lots of lawsuits against Scotiabank and Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan Chase, but because of the way they were brought against the banks and they were brought against the fixes in London, which really isn't relevant. It has to do with the COMEX futures market in New York. If any lawsuit was brought against the CME Group or JP Morgan Chase or against, like I said, the CME Group and the COMEX futures market about the position limits they have and the enormous number of contracts that are there illegally, that would be a whole different ballgame. It would be over in a matter of days.
Okay, let's end on a positive note. I think I've asked you this before. Why should investors keep investing in silver? Is the upside just that this really will end someday?
Well, first of all, it will end someday. As to what day, we've already discussed.
We don't know.
We don't know. But I can tell you the upside potential when this market does move will be absolutely astronomical. It will be a move that will be talked about 100, 200 years from now, the day that silver and precious metals price moved higher. It will be one for the record books when it does happen. Okay, thank you so much for coming today. Great to have you. You're more than welcome. Thank you. Once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Invest News Network, and this is Head Start.